Hi everyone, my name is Jen and today we're going to talk about how you can get into the habit of meal planning and prepping freezer meals for your family. It's going to make your life so much easier. After a long day, you can have dinner ready in less than 30 minutes. So if you've never tried freezer cooking before, it's a super easy method of meal prep in which you take your ingredients, put them into a freezer bag. If you're gonna use them within a couple days, you can stick them in the fridge or you can put them in the freezer and use them later. This simplifies meal prep because all you have to do in the morning is put all your ingredients in the slow cooker, and then by the time you get home from work or at the end of the day, you just have to put your meal together and dinner is done. A lot of people also tend to think that freezer meals can be boring or bland or mushy, but all of these recipes that I'm sharing with you today are tried and true. And one tip I have about freezer cooking is it's really what you kind of supplement or finish the meal with that really makes it, right? So typically you're kind of slow cooking your main component or protein of the meal and then adding either bread or tortillas or rice, whatever goes with it, along with fresh veggies and garnishes are what is going to make these meals shine. I also tend to hear from people that they can overcomplicate meal planning and meal prepping, and this is definitely a simple process. In the cookbook I have that you all can download, there is actually a shopping list. So you can print this off, go to the grocery store, grab all of your ingredients, and put these meals together in less than an hour. And a bonus, I was able to price all of these items, and you're gonna be making 5 meals for your family that have leftovers for less than $70, which is a huge deal. So the recipes that I'm going to share with you to put together today that are included in the cookbook are Cool Ranch chicken tacos. We're also gonna put together an easy instant pot lasagna, some chicken sandwiches, a really good recipe for bourbon chicken, and then a Tex-Mex beef stew. Like I mentioned, all of these recipes are tried and true and super family friendly, and as we're putting them together, I'll kind of give you some tips about how you can serve these for your family. Okay, so let's go ahead and get to the prepping. All right, so the first recipe I'm gonna start out with is this Tex-Mex beef stew. I have made this multiple times. It is definitely a tried and true meal. It's really good. And just so you're aware, the recipes are written in terms of prep directions and cooking directions. And then ingredients are what goes in the freezer bag, and then added on the day of cooking. You don't put those in the freezer bag. So just so you can kind of keep everything straight. So I've got my 2 pounds of stew meat in this Ziploc bag here. You can use chuck roast cubed up, sirloin cubed up. You can actually just buy stew meat at the store if you don't want to cut it up yourself. And then I went ahead and got all my seasonings out last night and combined them. So that was one less thing I had to do when I was putting these together. So in this container, I've got oregano, cumin, onion powder, salt, sugar, and red pepper flakes. So I'm just gonna go ahead and toss that in. And then in this container, I've got a pound of baby potatoes. So these are the ones that are already washed, and I really like them a lot because it really cuts down on the prep time, and like, who wants to scrub a bunch of little potatoes? So typically these come pre-washed in a bag, and you can buy them, you can find them at, or at least I could find them at my Walmart for about $3.50 a bag. So they're great in this particular recipe, but they're also great for quick dinners because you can boil them and mash them if you want to do like skin on mashed potatoes, or you can also just quickly cut them in half like I'm doing now and toss them on a baking sheet with some olive oil, salt, pepper, seasonings, and roast them in the oven. It makes a really good kind of family friendly side for dinner. And in terms of these potatoes, you don't want to cut them too small, which is why I'm just cutting them in half, because these are going to cook obviously in the slow cooker, and if you cut them really small, they will disintegrate. Okay, I've got a 12-ounce bag of frozen corn, so I'm going to go ahead and add that. If you have canned corn in your pantry, you can definitely substitute that, but I wouldn't add it in until like towards the end of cooking, because obviously since it's canned, it doesn't need to cook quite as much. And then we need some garlic. So 4 garlic cloves. I'm gonna use this container of minced garlic that I got at the grocery store, approximately 1 teaspoon per clove, so about 4 teaspoons. If you wanna mince your own, that's totally fine as well. And then the last thing I'm gonna add carefully is just 1 can. This is a 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. And that is it. So what I like to do then is take these off the baggie holders. And then I like to, a lot of times, freeze these flat in my freezer because you can stack one on top of the other. And it really cuts down on the amount of space needed. And then, especially if there's seasonings in there, I do like to kind of mix it up a little bit just to make sure I don't have, you know, big clumps of spices in there. And so this will go in the freezer. Obviously, when you cook it, you thaw it out. So typically just leave it out overnight in the refrigerator and it will thaw out enough that you can dump it into the slow cooker. And then you're gonna add 3 cups of beef broth, cook it on high for 4 to 6 hours or low for 8 to 10 hours. And then there's some suggestions for toppings on here. Another thing I like to do is always make sure that you label your bag, because if you don't, I can promise you that it will be in your freezer and you will absolutely not remember what is in there. So you can definitely just write directly on the freezer bag if you want to. I find it's more convenient to just get these labels and stick them on there, because sometimes when you add ingredients to here, there's a little bit of condensation on the outside and it's hard to write with your marker. So this one's done. On to the next. Next recipe is a bourbon chicken. And if you've ever had bourbon chicken, like in a food court at, you know, a Chinese restaurant, this is what that tastes like. Also, I've made this before. It's very good. It does have, the recipe does call for bourbon, but if you don't want to cook with alcohol, I would say just leave it out, but I think it does add a nice flavor to it. So if it's something you don't keep on hand, you can definitely, you know, buy one of those little shooters and that would work as well. So in the Ziploc bag here, I've got 2 pounds of boneless, skinless chicken thigh, and I just cut this into small pieces. I would say about 1 to 1.5 inch pieces. And then just like I did my seasonings yesterday, I also kind of mixed up the sauce ingredients. So one thing I really like to do is when I'm doing freezer cooking is kind of batch everything. So cut up all the meat at the same time, get all my seasonings at the same time, put it all in the bags at the same time. It just makes it a lot more efficient. One thing I was going to mention too is that this particular recipe calls for fresh minced ginger. My grocery store did not have it, so I am just substituting a teaspoon of dry ginger. You can totally do that. In here I've got 1/4 cup of brown sugar and then my ginger powder. So I'm gonna go ahead and add that to my chicken. And then this is the sauce ingredients. So it's kind of a lot of ingredients, but it's definitely things, you know, Asian condiments that you can keep in your refrigerator. They don't go bad for quite a long time and you can use them for lots of dishes. So it definitely is, you know, things that I keep in my pantry. So in here there's sesame oil, chicken broth, soy sauce, rice wine vinegar, ketchup, hoisin sauce, and honey. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pour that in. If you were, you know, mixing this up all at once, you don't have to put, you know, you don't have to put all the sauce ingredients separately into a dish. Just dump them in the bag. And then I'm gonna add my 1/4 cup of bourbon, and that is it for this one. So like a lot of freezer meals, this one calls to serve it with rice. So what I like to do is I really like to use a rice cooker. You can also get boil in the bag rice, whatever whatever works best for you, definitely do that. But this is really great served on white rice. And then it's cooked in the Instant Pot with, at the end, you add some cornstarch and water slurry just to kind of thicken the sauce, and then definitely serve it with green onions on top. It's really good. Okay, so we'll put our label on this, and that one is finished. Next recipe is an Instant Pot easy lasagna. Now this is obviously not a traditional lasagna because we don't have the different layers of noodles, but it definitely has all the flavors of lasagna. And if you're craving something like that, especially on a weeknight after work, super convenient. You don't have to bake it in the oven. It's done pretty quickly. So in my freezer bag here, I've got 1 pound of ground beef. We're just gonna add 1 diced onion to that. And then to cook this recipe, what you'll do is you'll take the ingredients of the bag and pop it into your Instant Pot on the saute function, which will help you brown the ground beef. And then you'll add a jar of marinara sauce and some water and your dry pasta. And if you didn't know, you can cook dry pasta in the Instant Pot. It's actually a great kind of hack for a one-pot meal. And then definitely with this, you could just have like a bagged salad on the side, and it would make a super quick dinner that you could get together really easily on a weeknight. So for the seasonings in this container, I've got 2 teaspoons of Italian seasoning, salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, and a couple teaspoons of sugar. That's just to kind of take some of the acidity out of the tomatoes. And that's it for this one. So super simple. You might not think that this saves you a lot of time on the weeknight, but I assure you it definitely does. And then, like I said, to put it together, you'll need a jar of marinara sauce. I really actually love this Walmart brand of marinara sauce. It tastes good and it's very inexpensive. And then water and your pasta. And then you can serve it in a bowl with some ricotta cheese on top and some mozzarella if you'd like. Okay, so next is a recipe for Cool Ranch chicken tacos. And this one is also super kid friendly. And one of the reasons why I like making recipes like this is because it's really kind of customizable to what everyone wants. So once you make the shredded chicken in the crock pot, you can have it in quesadillas, tacos, burritos, burrito bowls, you know, a salad, whatever you want to do. So in here, I've got 2 pounds of boneless, skinless chicken breast. You could also use boneless, skinless chicken thighs if you wanted to. And I'm just going to add the juice of 1 lime. I always prefer to use fresh citrus juice, but if you have dry or bottled on hand, you can definitely use that as well. And then let's see, I've got a package. This is equivalent to a package of ranch dressing mix. It's just some extra seasoning that I had on hand. So I'm gonna go ahead and use that up because I'm trying to clean out my spice cabinet. And then I made a mess, 1 packet of low sodium taco seasoning. I just use the low sodium because that way if I want to, when it's finished, I can add extra salt, and that way you can kind of salt it to your taste. And then in this container, I've got 1 cup of chicken broth. One tip I have if you cook a lot with chicken broth, obviously a lot of recipes call for it, and beef broth as well, is I keep this powdered Knorr bouillon on hand. So this reconstitutes 1 teaspoon per cup of water. And I find that it's more flavorful than the broth that you buy in a box or a can. It also doesn't take up as much room in your pantry. You don't have to lug all of those, you know, chicken broth boxes home from the store. And also it's just really convenient, and that way I never run out of broth. Okay, so that's it for this recipe. I am gonna kind of mix this one around a little bit since we've got a bunch of seasonings in there, but this one is super easy. You'll just obviously put it in the freezer, and then when you wanna make it, pop it out, thaw it overnight in the refrigerator, stick it in your slow cooker. You can do high on 3 to 4 hours or low for 6 to 8 hours. You'll know when the chicken is done when it shreds apart really, really easily in the slow cooker. And like I mentioned, you could use chicken thighs if you prefer dark meat for this. And then you can just serve it with whatever toppings you want on your tortillas. All right, so last recipe is a recipe for chicken sandwiches. And this is from my friend Anna. She calls it picky eater chicken sandwiches because it's great for families. Obviously everyone in your family is going to love it, but I've got some chicken breast in here. You can also use chicken thighs if you'd like to. And then the seasonings for this are 2 tablespoons of Italian seasoning, half a teaspoon of celery seed, onion powder, sugar, salt, black pepper. So we're going to go ahead and add that to our chicken. And then I'm going to add the equivalent of 3 cloves of garlic, so about 3 teaspoons. I don't measure it because it's not gonna matter too much one way or another. And then to this, we're gonna add 1 can of cream of chicken soup, and then just 1 cup of chicken broth. And then that's all that goes in the freezer bag. So for this one, once you thaw this out, cook it in the slow cooker. You want to cook it just like the last recipe. enough so that your chicken shreds super easily. And then at the end of slow cooking, you're actually gonna throw a block of, I use 1/3 less fat cream cheese into here and kind of shred the chicken and stir it around with that. It really adds a good flavor to it. And then you can just serve this on buns with your choice of toppings. It's good with pickles, cheese, hot sauce, kind of whatever you want to put on it. And if you have never done freezer cooking before, don't worry, it's super easy, but I also have a page in the ebook where you can find the must-have products that you need for freezer meal cooking. Honestly, you probably have most of these already. So you can see how simple all of those meals were to put together. The action step that I want to encourage you to take today is to download this free printable cookbook. Take your shopping list. If you're gonna go to the grocery store, go to the grocery store, get all your items, check them off. Or you can also use this to shop online if you like doing grocery delivery like I do. And then as soon as you get everything, you're gonna prep your meals, you're gonna stick them in the freezer, and you're gonna have dinner done for the whole week for your family. If you're looking for more cooking and kitchen inspiration from a real life mom just like you, you can visit my channel on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and search for Jen Chapin. You'll find a ton of inspiration there for home cooks and busy parents alike. So I encourage you to get started today. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to download your free ebook.